Hey everybody, welcome to Endure, the Athlete Story. I'm your host, Emmett Mullen. This podcast is brought to you by EJX2 Coaching. I'm a triathlon coach with a background in sports science, and I also provide lactate testing for anyone based in the northwest of Ireland. So you can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at EJX2 Coaching, and if you want to get in touch or just send a message, please feel free. On today's show we have Doherty. He's an elite Irish ITU triathlete. He has a bronze medal at the Junior World Championships in Auckland 2012. He's a multiple Irish champion in sprint and Olympic distance triathlons. And in this episode, Con talks to us about his rise as a junior through to senior, a backyard Ironman relay world record challenge that he done with his brothers, Super League triathlon racing, the Olympics and how he hopes to be there in Paris 2024, how he ran barefoot in a race once, and he tells about his artistic side in shoe design. So let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy the show, and thank you for listening. So, Colin, welcome to the Endure podcast. Thanks very much for coming on and giving us your time.
Glad to be here. Pleasure.
Thank you. Colin, firstly, I just want to go back to the start, basically, how you got into triathlon, how you got into, or what sport was it first that sort of got you going?
Well, in triathlon, it would have been swimming, believe it or not, even though that's the weakest of the three. But swimming, I would have done a lot of sports as a kid, and really would have tried. Me and my brother were just saying this, like we would have tried so many sports when we were children, and then I did swimming, sort of the most consistently. It was, I don't know, was this maybe my friends were there or. I really don't know. That was the one that kind of stuck. And then I did well in cross country, or I got on the cross country. I wouldn't say I did well, but I got on the cross country team. I think I was the last person to get onto the team in the primary school, the cross country team to go on and do maybe the regionals, and which I mean is the lowest level that, to start.
Yeah.
And I wasn't good at it. I was just middle of the field, and then got into that, and then eventually I found out about Ironman, and I was sort of inspired by that. I don't really want to do Ironman now, but that was what inspired me initially. And then I bought a bike with my confirmation money, got into cycling, and then one thing led to another, and stayed with that.
So was it always like endurance sports, like swimming, cycling, run? Did you play any team sports, GA or soccer?
I would have. I wasn't a big fan of GA. I did play GA. Rugby would have been probably the main one. Tried boxing, karate, horse riding.
Everything.
Anything. Like, because I was a bit like, to be honest, like as a kid, I would have been. Once I got interested in something, I wouldn't leave my parents alone to not let me try it, so, and they were, God bless, they were very accommodating, like, and so I just literally process of elimination sort of figured out what I liked and what I didn't like, and I think there's a lot to be gained as well doing team sports when you're young. You shouldn't really focus on anything, and the same thing for the individual stuff. I think if you're focused on a team sport, it's good to do something by yourself as well. So I would have done a lot, and just eventually found my way into triathlon.
Yeah, you mentioned your brother there. Is it Aaron, or there's three of you that compete in sport? Is that right? Like in triathlon?
So there's four of us, but three of us would be involved in sport. Aaron, we live down here in Limerick, the two of us, and then home is Bucket back in Westport. And then the other Ethan is the other one that does triathlon. He's just turned 15. So yeah, the three
Good
of
stuff.
us.
So
We enjoy
we'll get to that in a minute. But you've done a bit of a lockdown challenge, the three of you, over the
Oh
last
yeah,
summer. So we'll talk about that in
yeah.
a minute. But just in terms of your brothers, like obviously Ethan is a few years younger than you, but is Aaron closer in age to you in terms of growing up and competing against you? Or was that a thing within the family? Like we
Yeah,
competing a lot?
we
Or
would. I mean, we wouldn't like. So Aaron would be 5 years younger than me.
all right,
So he's still quite a bit younger. But we wouldn't have necessarily competed that often, other than in maybe cycling where it was a bit
yeah,
more open. But I mean, we'd have trained together, and you would have, sort of been racing and training, and
yeah,
you'd have always had competition among. And even now, Ethan, he's sort of now at the level. Once you get to around 15, 16, you start to become. I mean, there's rapid development, like,
yeah,
and even in my own, the three of us would experience that. So as soon as Aaron hit 15 and Ethan's now 15, that was when we were sort of able to train together, and I started worrying about them being closer to me.
yeah, closer to you. So they were chasing you. I
Yeah,
suppose you were inspiring
yeah,
them,
and
like did they follow what you were doing, sort of thing, or they
no,
have
I
their
can't speak in
yeah,
their behalf. Like, um, I think so. Yeah, I think it was a large part.
yeah,
Um, I think I was as myself. I would say very, very, very driven when I was a kid.
yeah,
And sort of, I think when you have any individual that, yeah, is very motivated to do something, if there's people around you, even if it's your friends, they're likely to be more motivated to stay in it, or
yeah,
um, yeah. So
yeah. Because like triathlon, especially, what age are you now, Con? Are you 20,
25.
25? So like
Yeah.
you're talking what age when you got into it? Maybe over 10 years ago, anyway. When you were
Yeah, I was probably, I think I was 2009. I think
yeah,
that's when I was doing the three of them at the same time, I
yeah,
think.
and like then it
Um,
wouldn't have been like a massive sport, definitely not for that age group either.
Not at
So
all, no.
like where did you find what was the next step then of getting into a club or doing your first race, or where did you get that?
No, okay. Well, I was in each of the individual clubs. So there was,
Okay.
again, I mean, environment's a huge thing that plays a part. There was a competitive cycling team, and there was a lot of there was junior cyclists that were at national podium level. Then in swimming, I was training with Castlebar Swim Club, and like I would have been training with Nicholas Quinn, who's an Olympian now for breaststroke.
Yeah.
And then in the running side, we had the same thing. Like there's a guy, David Harper. He was one of the most dominant um, runners in the country, and one of my best friends. So like everything, like there was a lot of circumstances that kind of came together, and then
Yeah.
because I was so motivated in each of the clubs, it was pretty much like you're always playing catch up to the guys who are the best in each of the individual things.
Yeah.
When you put it together, um, it sort of works out. I do have a lot of get into it, or not. I'm not, but triathlon clubs for kids, they're great, but I think
Mm-hmm.
they are quite limited sometimes, just with for an elite level. Like compared to what I think when I was doing when I was younger, I don't know if it was necessarily the healthiest approach, but just because you were trying to pursue elite level in each of the individual sports, I would imagine in a junior triathlon club, you're not being pushed to that level just because you don't have the best guy of each.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was no triathlon club, and it wasn't actually till there was a guy, Sebastian Octo. Do you know? Have you heard of him?
No,
No,
I've never
Sebastian.
heard of him.
So he was a French guy. can't even remember what his whole background was, but he very well organized fella, and he before I moved over to Castlebar Swim Club, he took over the Westport side, this Westport Swim Club, and he set up. I was kind of eager to get involved in high performance triathlon at the time, and he said it was an opportunity anyways to set up a club, and a club was set up, and that's a club we have now in Westport, that came from that time, but I wouldn't have said that I was particularly involved in it. It was more sort of the individual clubs.
Yeah. So then I presume you start doing triathlon races or finding triathlon races where you could, or what? Were you too young? Did you have that problem of trying to get into
well,
races?
I remember, I don't know if this is actually a rule, but I think you have to be 16 to be allowed to do, I think, a half or sprint distance rather.
Yeah.
I think that's the rule.
Yeah.
So when I started, I was only 14, so it was more, I was competing in each of the individual events, and there was no triathlon races in the country for juniors. You know, there was, I think the year I started, there was the national champs, and that was it. And in the country, there was less than 100 juniors registered. Now we have, I think last year there was or the year before last, there was 3,000 juniors registered,
which is great, but obviously for
absolutely
future.
Brilliant. Yeah. But from the pool that we had back then, this was sort of like, from that pool of 100, 10 of those athletes, 10% of the pool of Ireland that was like competitive in triathlon was on the Irish team. And most of those athletes are now the athletes. Like, so there was myself, Russell, Chris Minturn, who else is around now? Emma Sharkey, Aaron O'Brien. They were the people from back then, and they progressed the whole way up.
Yeah.
So that was, how did we start racing then? It would have been the national champs. We would have gone abroad to the UK. So they had the Super Series at the time that was quite big, and that was sort of an intermediate platform between that and the European Series.
Yeah.
And it was sort of the only junior racing that you could get, and it was extremely good. Like, it was, even you got the elites. It used to be televised, and you get the best elites in the country. Like, at the time, you know, it would have been, what's his name? Not Jan Frodeno. Will Clark and Stuart Hayes and those guys racing in this. You know, the same guys that have been racing the World Series, and then it filtered down. The junior races were just as intense for the level. Yeah. So we'd have gone over there, and we'd have raced, and we'd have came back, and we realized, like, I think we got our asses handed to us the first race, and we came back, and the next race we went back was the national champs, and you know, you went back, you did a few months racing. I remember I went back and I won their national champs, the British national champs. Yeah, and they didn't know what to do, because we were sort of invited, and they couldn't give us, you know, they couldn't put you on the podium because they didn't expect that there'd be we do well. But that was the shock we needed, you know, like that was and I would say I probably had, that was the shock that we need, and it was the exposure we needed before then to race in the European circuit, and sort of it prepared us for that. So
good stuff. So
that was the kind of that was the trajectory.
Yeah, so it was like straight into the deep end of draft legal elite junior racing rather than the try out your local leisure center race.
Well, we did. There was a few races. So that guy said, the guy that was the coach in Westport, he was my coach for a brief period of time, and he sort of allowed me to race. Do you know what I mean? He kind of just turned a blind eye towards it, and that was how yeah, and that's how I kind of got to race and get a bit of exposure. But other than that, there was maybe before we did those British races in the 2 years, um, I think maybe did 3 races. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like it didn't really do that much. But then the races were, I would say that exposure overseas was really key to to
Yeah.
yeah, open your eyes and see what you need to do.
And then you progressed on to like the world junior stage. Yeah, you had a third place in Auckland, 2012, was it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
would that have been like your first? Obviously, it's massive. It was World Championships. Was that your first breakthrough, or did you have an idea going into that you had a good shot there?
Yeah, well, again, I was I was really young for that race compared
Yeah,
to. I think we look back at I was the youngest ever podium athlete in males in the records that we could go through, and I remember going to that race. I was a wild card because I got the last spot. I think I was a wild card. We didn't qualify a spot for the country, but because we were sort of a developing country in the sport,
yeah,
it gave us a spot, and I got the wild card, and that season was it was breakthrough. I mean, I would have developed a lot as like physically,
yeah,
I just turned 17, and um, the few months leading into that were just the most, I would say, the most intense I've ever trained in my life. I mean, even looking back on it now, I don't think I could put myself in the same. I
at
don't
that
think I
age.
could, like at that, and no, yeah, at that age, but like I remember the pain and what I was able to subject myself to. I couldn't do that now. I just what I was doing day in day out. I couldn't do that now. I wouldn't be. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't be able to do it to myself. Um. Now, psychologically, I have an inkling as to why I was capable of doing it at the time, but that really prepared me for that. And I remember
Yeah,
going over to the world champs. I had no. I mean, I would have done well in the European series races. Would have got some top tens. But wouldn't have. There would have been no reason to put to bet on me to do well.
yeah,
But in my head, I had executed everything perfectly. It was probably the least nervous I've been for. I remember I walked up to the start line. I was excited, and it was sort of like just waiting for things to unfold. And it was a case of like being the most prepared you could be.
mm.
There's no doubt, you know what I mean? And then it was just execution, and I mean, it was magical, really, because when you put in that level of work, it just shows what you can achieve.
Did you
So
surprise yourself with it? Although you were confident because of the training you done, but were you surprised at like
initially I was super disappointed that I didn't.
because you didn't
When I
win?
crossed the line, that I did because I didn't win, and I just thought, oh, for fuck's sake, like I could have, it was so close, and if I had maybe played my cards, in hindsight I couldn't have done any better.
Yeah,
But that one initially was my feeling, and that was just because I was comparing myself against what I could do. Then obviously as soon as it was over, it was like, hold on a sec, this is a world champs,
yeah,
and yeah, I was pretty happy with that, and then yeah, that
yeah.
was that.
Because I remember watching it at the time. I was just getting into triathlon, so it was like super exciting time for me. And then like seeing an Irish person around the same age at a world junior getting a medal, was like, wow, that's class. And obviously then you just like continued on in your elite career. But like there were some big names in that race, wasn't there? They're like,
Yeah, I wouldn't say it progressed as well as I would have hoped.
well, you
Um,
continued and like you've got a lot of elite starts and a
perhaps
lot of you got a lot of
and
like
yeah,
you
and some
didn't
yeah,
because there was
didn't drop off completely.
well yeah, but the names in that race were there's
Oh
some
yeah, big.
like
Yeah, I think there was
Blum,
Connix, Sulwald,
Blumenfeld was behind
Blumenfeld.
you.
Yeah, Bloomy and Vian. There was that generation. I mean, that's like the generation you see now that are
Yeah, they've
really
all
kicking ass
come. You have all come
from
through,
that.
and still all very young, like obviously within the sport, but
Yeah,
it just seems to get younger and younger. The like
the age.
the quality of athletes are even younger now,
Yeah,
even though it was kind of considered an endurance sport. The older you get, the better, which is still true as well. When you seen Jan Frodeno at Miami last night, did you watch that? Or
I just seen the result now. I didn't watch it, but
yeah, it's like
I seen the result.
he's still,
I
he's
think
still,
it is an endurance sport, but I mean, I think what you're seeing is probably that generation was the first generation, other than maybe the Brownies,
yeah,
who were triathletes from the start.
yeah,
You know, a lot of athletes before that, even the likes of Gavin Noble, our own athletes,
yeah,
Gavin Noble, Aideen, Brian Keane, they would have been transition athletes. You know, they
yeah,
came from other sports.
yeah.
They had done it, and then they sort of, when they were in their late teens or 20s, they
Moved
started
over,
an
yeah.
elite career. Whereas, the Brownies, they were they were serious. Now they're probably a bit more serious about the running, but they were serious about triathlon from the very start. I think this is the first generation that you're seeing now come through that are, with Blumenfeld,
Yeah,
Gustav Eden, Hayden Wild. These are the guys that have done it since they were
since they were young.
since they were yeah since they were young.
Because there's a few like young athletes I coach and like 20 years old or whatever, and they're like, like them elites are 21, 22, and they're winning already. And I was like, but they haven't been doing it for 1 or 2 years. They've been doing it for like 12 years, 13
Tots,
years.
yeah, yeah,
So it's
yeah,
not so much the age, it's more the years behind you and the years built up of just enjoying it and continuing the sport.
yeah,
It's like just hanging around long enough to realize how good you can get, basically.
yeah. I think that's probably a big part of it. I do think there's probably. I mean, I don't that there's not as many juniors coming up. So now there's a lot of 24, 25 year olds.
Yeah.
Yi is another guy. He's what, 21, 20, 22 or 23. Um, there's still sort of that same age bracket, other than Vincent and um, Brownlee,
Yeah.
and yeah, the sort of guys. But I don't know. I don't see. Now, obviously, I'm not exposed to the guys coming up. You get the odd guy who's super good. He comes in, but I don't know if there's the same batch. The
Mhm.
quantity that's coming in that there was. We'll only see that in a few years, but um, I think it takes the guys that are at the top are savages.
Mm.
Like, like to be the best in the sport. I mean, you gotta fucking be
Yeah.
committed, like beyond. It's insanity, really. And I
Yeah.
mean, like I just said openly, like when I was a kid, I don't think I could do what I was doing. I mean, there's a threshold, but you know, the environment that we came out of a recession, say at the time there was a global recession. I think there was a lot of pressure, and I think even for myself, sport was an avenue to get out.
Yeah.
Um, I would imagine that had quite an effect on the athletes that are coming through, even in cycling.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of athletes at the same age that are really going for it and at the top. And I wonder, the past few years have been a bit more comfortable. Will that have an effect on the level of athletes that we'll just have for maybe the next 5 years? Because even in Ireland, like I don't see any I hate to say it, like, but I don't
Yeah.
see any standout Irish athletes in triathlon.
Well, that's
There's
what I wanted
there's
to touch on. Me, obviously, you've come through that whole
yeah,
like that pathway basically from years ago, from 15, 16 years old, right up through. And now, as you say, there's a lot more. It's like 3,000 juniors registered or whatever, and there's a lot more
yeah.
junior racing, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think needs to happen for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 juniors to progress through the elite and beyond the world stage? And
I think it's a reality check. I don't think we get enough there's a lot. This is just my opinion, so I don't. If there's anybody
that's it.
watching this, don't hate on me. I'm telling you what I can see and what I've just experienced, and
Oh, that's it.
we have a pool that's literally 3,000% more than what we had.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3,000% more than what we had. So, I mean, you have a bigger pool. of athletes, yes, the quality is lower, and it is lower. So I feel like the circumstances, I mean, well, at the time when what was set up, we had a small group of very elite athletes that were we were put in a competitive environment. We had a high performance director at the time that was, his name was Chris Jones, and he set up the junior program, and made it, there was a very clear development pathway. And from there, I mean, we knew each other in the country, and we'd meet up, we'd have a training camp, and we'd be competitive, like we were friends, but we were competitive.
Yeah.
And then we'd go back to training, and we'd want to be the best, so that when we came back, when we met each other, we'd want to kick each other's asses.
Yeah.
And then when we went abroad, we were getting that. So that competitiveness, that we were fed, whether it's healthy or not, that was a huge factor.
Yeah.
I think nowadays kids are more involved, which is important. I don't know if it's facilitating the athletes that are the most talented and that have, I would say, the character, that if it's nurtured I don't see why we couldn't nurture a world champion.
Yeah.
Like, without a doubt. I mean, triathlon's a sport where it's pretty expensive. I mean, we have in this country how much you can invest in a kid, compared to maybe Spain, Italy, France, even. There's more resources. From what I can see, like there's more that you can give to a kid. So I think everything's set up for success in the sport. There's benefits as well to when you have a small organization, you can focus more resources on a smaller population. Over in Britain, it's a boxing match between, like, you're fighting for fun, and and that can be unhealthy as well for coming through. So there is a lot of benefits to what we have in Ireland, but I think if we want to see success, we have to be pushing. We have to not pushing, but we need to be allowing kids to see the reality. If they want to become the best in the world, they have to realize what they need to do, and get a reality check. Because I'm not involved enough, but I just feel like that's not happening.
Yeah.
You need to be running at 95% of what the best guy in the country is running by the age you're 18, and you need to be the same level for swimming and cycling. And if you're not, if you're not, you're not. I mean, that's fine. It doesn't matter. But I mean, for the athlete needs to know, and there needs to be that transparency, because I just think that there's an overemphasis now put on participation. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't want to come across as being like this sort of asshole that's telling them what to do, but like, that's the reality of it. If you want to be better, we have to be more competitive.
I get what you're saying, because it could come full circle. Like in 10 years' time, if there's nobody to cheer for, if there's nobody at that elite level, then participation could fall. So there needs to be that balance, I think, as well, of obviously pushing the participation, which is happening, but also nurturing the elites, and, as you say, that reality check on young athletes coming through, of what it actually is going to take, and what you can't. There's going to be some things you have to sacrifice, or, as people like to say, invest your time wisely or whatever. But like, as you say, like,
and we can't turn around. I mean, if in 10 years, if we don't have an athlete podiuming regularly in World Series in 10 years, I would say it's a failure, because there's no reason we shouldn't. I mean, 10 years, you take a kid that's 10 years old, that's okay in either the three of them, and you've developed them, and there's no reason for it not to happen. If it doesn't happen, then it's not been done correctly. And the kids that want to do the best, again, I think this is one of the biggest issues. the kids that do want to be the best, and there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be the best. I'd say it's probably more healthy not wanting to be the best, like in terms of mental health. And it's not, I don't think it's necessarily the healthiest thing to be in elite sport.
Yeah.
But for the kids that do want to be the best, they have to be given the opportunity, and they have to get, I would argue, more attention than the others, because that's probably a thing that's undervalued, is the character of the individual, especially at that age, because you don't know how somebody's going to develop.
Yeah.
You know, but the people that are, there's a lot of there is some kids around the country. To name one, Chloe Bennett, if she's watching. I mean, there's kids like that you can see the drive in them.
Yeah.
And you just want to be like, you got it. You don't need to worry about it.
Just enjoy it and
follow
continue
your path.
training. Yeah,
exactly. Just enjoy. Keep doing what you're doing, and try and not fall off the path. And again,
that
as
mindset
I say,
sorry, go ahead.
No, there's no right way. Like, you know what I mean? It's just facilitation.
Yeah, just touching on like what you were saying about when you were coming through that system of it being a small kind of cohort of driven athletes, and you were pushing each other and going away and coming back to camps and trying to see who got better and who could win and stuff. I heard on like the current Norwegian setup, which obviously we all know about, Gustav Iden, Gyllenfelt, Casper Stornes, and then they have a lot of gears coming through as well. But like they were saying a few years ago, it was maybe 10 years ago, they had like one of the dads whose son's done triathlon, started up this training day, identification day, and they came from a few different sports but got them on the triathlon from a young age. So they like pushed them, and it was a small group, and like I think nearly all of them that are in that squad now nearly were at that first training day. And it's a small sport, but obviously they might have the same situation Ireland's in a few years with increased participation and stuff, and how they manage that'll be interesting. But do we need to come back to that, like as you say, that attention and focus on the ones that do really want to do well? I'm not trying to make everyone, trying to make, like, as you said, that's the reality check of not everyone is going to make it, so really focus on the ones that want to
well, it's a balance. I mean, like, I think like the whole, you know, a lot of what in our sport anyways is being politically driven, you know, participation, diversity, you know, that's been the emphasis in the past few years, and it has seriously good implications. But as a result, there's been a lack. I mean, just look at the guys, for instance. Like the girls are actually in a better position. So you've got Erin O'Connell, Ella Doherty, Maeve Gallagher. I'm lacking a few. There's 5 or 6 of them that are very good athletes, and they'll probably go on to be our best elite women. You don't have that in the men, and that's there's a part of that that's because there was a push on girls in sport. Now, is that fair? I don't think that's fair. I mean, there's why should there be more girls now than there was boys? Because there was emphasis push. So there's a bit of a backlash to that. That's what's happening. So there needs to be emphasis put on both participation and the elites, and a clear development pathway put out, and the kids and the adults or the parents of the children need to know what it is. There needs to be clear, transparent. I mean, that is one of the biggest issues, even at TR watching. Transparency and a clear development pathway needs to be set out. And then at least we're doing the best that we can to enable kids to come through. And I think that's where the money should go as well. Like, I mean, even looking at myself, I probably have another 5 or 6 years. Russell, probably the same. James, there's a couple of us now, but again, it's the same batch of athletes, you know. There's a gap then. There's nobody.
There's no new sort of 18, 19 that are really knocking on the door of like overseas, like European or international elite.
No, and that's where the money should go, because otherwise there's just not going to be anybody. There literally won't be anybody.
Would you agree, Colin, that like the athletes are there, and there's talent around that age group if they were just nurtured right even over the
Absolutely.
next few years, because there is some
Oh,
good
absolutely.
talented
Absolutely.
athletes that age. They just need
As
the
I
right
said,
advice and the right
they need the right
direction.
advice, and we need to create the culture. Like, we need to create a culture and environment to allow them to flourish. And I mean, again, like, as soon as you do that, if we do that, there's no reason why we wouldn't have
Yeah.
a world level or World Series podiuming athlete in both the male and the females. If I wasn't doing the sport, I would be 100% committing my time to this. But like, as a student athlete, like, you just don't, like, there's nothing like, I feel so passionate about it, especially kids in sport,
Yeah.
because I would have gone through everything that 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 it takes and what's the reality of it. I wish I could do more about it myself, but just at the moment I can't. But that's what I think needs to be done.
Yeah. I think in a few years I'll send you this clip and you can apply for your application to a new job in Triathlete Ireland.
Yeah, so
you'd be the right man for it. But you touched on there about when you were younger training like mad, and I think there's a bit of the mad Irishman in there. But I think I'm right in saying one time might have been Athlone. You came into T2 and you couldn't find your running shoes.
Oh no, that was Dublin, DCT.
Dublin, and you
Yeah,
ran
that was actually that was for a junior title, I think, a national title.
you ran the run with no
Around the,
shoes on, bare feet.
yeah, yeah. So I
And
came in. Now I think it was my own fault in hindsight, but I came in and I went. I think I went to the wrong rack, and I couldn't find my shoes, and I was contrary. I was saying, like, I've lost my shoes, and it was non-draft, so I think I had a gap coming in off the bike, and I was sort of afraid if I waited any longer. I think I could just hear the guys come in and just spent maybe 30, 40 seconds looking for the shoes. And I just said, just run barefoot. You'll be fine. I mean, you have enough of a gap, go for it. And I remember there was a bit of it was on grass anyways. So I knew I just needed to get through the first 2 kilometers, which are on road, and then it wouldn't be so bad. And I think I'd done a lot of barefoot running anyways. Like, I would do that a lot in training. So there was no reason not to. I got disqualified.
You got disqualified, I was just going to say.
I wasn't very happy about it. And I wasn't very happy with the guy that disqualified me. I won't name names.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, but it was it was a good story.
Definitely. Like, and what was the feet like the next day?
We were okay. Yeah, it was
not too
okay. It
bad.
was funny because it happened again there in the Super League.
Well, I was going to say, you done it before it was cool in Super League.
Yeah.
They happened in Super League again, did it?
So we went last year. The year before last. There was no Super League last year. They got invited to do the Malta New Jersey. What's the island off Britain? Jersey, yeah. And Jersey and Malta. And in Jersey, I got into the final, and I knew that I had very little chance of getting through the first round. Like, so I knew I had to go without. It was weird because it wasn't going to be a swim, bike, run. It was swim, run, swim, run, swim, or something like that. Because it was just the weather was too bad.
Yeah.
And I had said from the get-go, I'm not touching my shoes. I need to get as far as I can into this race. And that was funny because I ran straight through transition, and Johnny Brownlee didn't realize that I did it, and he got eliminated.
I remember that. That's right.
It was funny. I mean, obviously they were all better athletes. Like, but I mean, you just play to your strengths and you be smart about it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And
now, did you see Christian Blumenfeld did in the same race?
He just done the whole thing anyway.
His feet. I mean, his feet were in bits. Oh.
Yeah. And I think that Leo Berger, maybe in one of the more recent ones, maybe in somewhere else, but
before
he's
that.
like he ripped his feet to shreds too, didn't he? So
Yeah,
I think it's better with the shoes on.
yeah, it is. Unless you're really desperate. Yeah,
unless unless it's the knock Johnny Brownlee out of the
yeah,
race,
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
you may as well. But what how do you find the Super League racing? Is it, do you enjoy
I
that
love it.
side? Look good.
Love it. It's very different. Like it's not, even in like in sprint triathlon and Olympic distance triathlon, like we call it sprints. I mean, we're still racing for an hour and two
Yeah,
hours. They're both endurance events,
yeah,
but in in Super League, it's similar to sort of cyclocross or mountain bike in terms
mm-hmm.
of you're constantly changing. It's a lot more aerobics and I would say skill based. Like there's a lot more like bike handling involved,
Yeah,
tactics involved. It's more entertaining, I think. I prefer it. I would love to do more of it.
mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I don't know. I think I could be wrong, but I think ITU want to incorporate more of it, even in their own race, and they want to find a way to bridge the gap.
Yeah,
From what I hear, just because as well, it's more spectator friendly.
yeah. Well, it's definitely like, as a fan of triathlon, like you enjoy watching sprints and Olympics and even a half Ironman. You can watch it when you know what's going on and stuff. But for people that might just flick it on or see it, it's definitely a lot more entertaining. The diving back
Yeah,
in and the constant tactics and the short shoots and all the different time
all the different tactics.
handicaps and stuff. So it's definitely a lot more interesting to watch. But how does that work in terms of you qualifying, or just get a wild card sort of thing? What way does that work?
Yeah, I just got so they. I think they'd like to have representation from
Mm-hmm.
other countries, like yeah, a few countries, and I just got to walk. I had some good races on the European series, and they invited me over, and I said, "There's no way that I'm not going to do it, so
Definitely.
might as well take up the offer." So I'd like. I mean, if they're watching, I hope they invite me back because they're
Super League. If anyone from Super League's watching, get calling
yeah,
back on. And what about
yeah,
the
yeah,
indoor stuff? Would that interest you? You know that's coming up in a few weeks in London, isn't
yeah,
it? The arena.
yeah, yeah. I haven't heard from them, so I doubt it that I'm like the guys that I've seen doing the indoor stuff are like, I mean, usually there's around 30 people at the normal one.
Yeah,
I think there's maybe 10 or 12 in the ones they've been doing indoors, and they're really the cream of the cream.
yeah,
I'd love to do it. I mean, like any opportunity to race. Um, and Zwift, I think Zwift has offered a lot of value in the past year. Even
yeah,
for myself, I do probably now at the moment, especially with cottage. Most of my riding is done on Zwift. So yeah,
yeah.
if I was given the opportunity, I'd love to do it. Yeah,
Because definitely, it's like ticking off the esports.
yeah.
Like what people like in the height of lockdown, you're
And it's still
watching these.
entertaining, I think.
You watch these Swift races and the wee characters going around, but it's definitely still entertaining. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely breeding something. I mean, if they could get it's probably it's going to get better and better. I mean, in terms of like graphics and
yeah,
maybe integration, especially with the like all the developments in AR and VR and that. But yeah, just even as a training tool, like being able to
yeah,
motivate, it's so much easier to just get up on the trainer and be like, okay, I'm going to do a race,
yeah,
rather than I have to sit down, I have to do 10 by a minute max, and like I think with that distraction is
yeah,
it's more fun, definitely.
yeah.
At least for myself, yeah.
And you have the interaction of like people be on Discord and stuff. You can talk, like, be on
Yeah,
riding with
meet
someone
up
who's
your
on the
mates.
other side of the world and stuff like that. And obviously,
Yeah,
in the times we're in, that's a big positive.
it's huge. Yeah. And would you use it yourself much?
I've never I've never raced in Zwift or anything. My mum and dad do. They're big Zwifters, so but nah, I just unfortunately I just have a standard old school turbo.
Oh, nice.
But
Oh, you have no power meter.
a power meter on the bike, so but
Okay.
I suppose I could jump on it, but I'll see. I would like to,
Thanks,
but
mate.
I've never just got round it yet. try to watch them.
Yeah.
So like ITU racing is that your main focus at the moment? Is that
Yeah. So
accumulating points in the ITU system and Olympic point system? Is that what your goal is at the
yeah,
moment?
yeah. So I don't. I mean, I got into the sport originally, as I said, to do. It was Ironman that I was inspired by, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have. I mean, this the shorter stuff, the shorter the better. The shorter. I enjoy racing short, sharp stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll probably stay in it as long as I can. I don't know if I'll go into Ironman even ever. Like I'll obviously do. I'll try maybe the halves. I think they're a bit more competitive. There's a bit more tactics involved, a bit more intensity. Don't right now. I don't have any inkling to even go towards Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely on the bucket list, but I really enjoy the dynamic of the ITU racing and the Super
Yeah.
League stuff. So yeah, right now it's about ranking. It's about keeping your ranking up, getting into races. Really, realistically, the Olympics, we've only got, so Russell White is in the best position to qualify the country the spot. So I'm really just keeping in shape, trying to balance training and cottage. And if for whatever reason he can't go, then I guess I have to be ready to
Yeah.
take the spot. So
And just could you explain to us how like that works? And is there the federation, so do Triathlon Ireland set like specific targets that you have to meet to qualify, and then obviously Olympics, the Olympic Committee, they have certain rankings you have to meet, or how does that go?
so there's so the biggest thing is the international qualification. Like we're in the position where we're just trying to qualify a spot, never mind being competitive. So the ITU have qualification criteria set out, and I mean there's a few ways to get a spot there, but once you've got the spot, then the country gets the spot, and then
the
it's
country can
really,
decide which athlete goes.
so they can decide, provided so when the federation gets the spot, unless the athlete, in Ireland's case, I think it's top 8 at the World Series. If you get a top 8 at the World Series and you qualify the spot, you get the spot.
Right.
So that's like a guarantee.
Yeah.
I think there's a few criteria we have to say, if you get this result, then you get the spot. If there's a spot qualified. Other than that, it's discretion, but anybody who's eligible to be picked from the discretion still has to meet a certain criteria by the ITU. So I think it's a top 140 on the Olympic list. And I think it's only myself and Russell that are in the top 140 at the moment. So there's only 2 of us eligible, and he's qualifying the spot. And I mean, provided he's fit and healthy and he's good to race, he's going to be the guy at the start line. So
and is that, have you any idea of when the next race will be, or how does Russell go about securing that spot for Ireland?
So when we were over in Florida last year, when the outbreak happened, and they shut down. So the qualification criteria for triathlon is a 2-year process, and it's your best 12 races over that period. And when we got to that date, they shut everything down from whatever it was. I think it was in some date in February, and they said once we get back around to February this year, we'll open the criteria again. Now, it's obviously gone on longer than they expected. So the criteria, I think May 11th was the cutoff date. So whoever was ranked and qualified the spots, that was the decision. But now there's a gap where there's no races. ITU have decided, I think it's not until the beginning of May that there's going to be races rerun. And from my understanding, they haven't yet addressed the fact that there's going to be a lack of races that are accounted for. So I think they're still waiting to make a decision on that and coming up with criteria. So there's a lot of it that's uncertain from my understanding. Myself, I mean, I'm sort of secure in that 140, the 140 range, but Russell, I mean, as soon as racing opens, I think Russell's going to be racing off the bat, even just to get freshened up. And but I don't think that's going to happen. As they said, it's not going to happen until May in the earliest. So that's the situation as it is.
So it's like unnerving times, like you want to stressful, I suppose, and more so in Russell's position, maybe that he just wants to know, sort of wants to get a bit of confirmation.
Yeah, I would imagine it's like I think so. Russell's, I think he's still over in Portugal training. We went over in February for 2 weeks of training, and he's just based himself out there. He's got a pretty good mindset. He's a bloody good guy, and I think he's sort of just he's accepted he doesn't know, but I think he finds it a bit easier the fact that everybody doesn't know. Nobody's got any certainty. So he's I think the best you can do in this situation is enjoy it, and if something comes around, you have to be ready to go for it. So that's how he's approaching it.
And is Paris 2024 on your radar? Is that something you're looking ahead?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, yeah, definitely. I'd like to be at the Olympics at least once.
Good.
So
good stuff.
Yeah.
So as we touched on a bit earlier, you done a lockdown challenge.
Yeah.
Last year with your two brothers. So was it Ethan's the youngest? Is it? He swam.
Yeah.
In a pool, a paddle.
Yeah.
Pool.
Yeah. So there's sort of we made up the figures a bit for that. Yeah.
Aaron, he rode in Zwift, he biked.
Yeah.
And you ran on a treadmill, all in your backyard. And
yes.
What was your goal in that, like
well,
time wise?
I mean, it was sort of, we didn't have we did it because we're kind of, we had too much time on our hands, and we realized, I'd say, like, mental health there was something like mental health was coming up everywhere, and mental health, even for myself, I thought was quite important and something that was going to be seriously important in the times. And we're seeing that now with the rises in suicide and depression and stuff. So we thought, why not do something and just try and raise a bit of money? And then the whole thing was, we were just going to do an Ironman anyways, just in the back garden, and just say, do you want to try and, just if you want to donate. And then we said, is there any way we could get more people to sort of donate? And then we just said, well, what's the world record for the Ironman? And we looked it up, and then we realized his Jan's swim was I don't know if it was down a river, but like poor Ethan was sort of at the back foot. But yeah, we realized, okay, this is what we need to do would it be possible to do it virtually? And we were like, it'd be hit and miss. And it was a good challenge because it kind of motivated us to keep training. We had, there was no races coming up. It was a good training goal. And I think we were 2 minutes off. I think we were virtually, we broke it by 2 minutes.
Yeah, he's done 7:33, 12 seconds.
Yeah.
And you ran, what did you run on the treadmill?
I think it was 2:17.
That's quick. Is that your first ever time doing that distance, or did you have an idea that you would do it? Or
I did that distance, but not at that. I mean, not that effort. I'd never done anything with that effort. I didn't think I was able to do like the treadmill. I'd done one run when I was 17, which was there was a Red Bull event called the Wings for Life.
Yeah.
And I was a Red Bull athlete at the time, and they invited me down, and I was just supposed to do the first 10 kilometers, and I took off, and my my agent in Red Bull, he must have come. I think he came up in the car and he was like, "Just keep going," and I was like, "Okay, right." And I mean, for somebody that's 17, I wouldn't advise running. Never mind running. It was, I think we got 48 kilometers. I got to, like, even if it was on soft surface, never mind on the road, like when your legs are not even fully developed. And that was the last time I did anything like that distance. I'd never run it close to that. And then, so I didn't think I'd make it. And it was only then I think I did a training run a week before the a week before the challenge. I think I did 30K at the same pace on the treadmill to see if I could get there, or maybe it was slightly slower. And I got to 30K and I was like, okay, I think maybe it's possible to do the pace. I think it was 18 kilometers an hour. I said I had to hold.
And what's that in like minutes per K or miles? Miles, do you know? Or
18K an hour.
18K is like 320 pace, something like that, is it?
Yeah, something like that.
Quick anyway.
And yeah. And it was like Ethan. So Ethan did this in the pool, and the poor guy, like the pool was freezing. And Ethan has, I'd say Ethan has probably 5% body fat. Like he's so skinny. Whatever his metabolism is, it's like he's just he's skin, bones, and muscle. And he did the swim, and we were, I think, 15 minutes or maybe 20 minutes off. Based on, we had to kind of come up with his effort and what like his stroke rate and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Aaron did the bike in. He averaged what 200 and I think 280 watts or something for 4 hours. 4 hours and 10 minutes.
That's sick.
On a turbo trainer, and then I had tummy problems that morning, and there was our neighbors came around, so like we were in the height of COVID, but there was sort of, the space was big enough that they could come around and kind of watch, and we'd obviously done it live, and I was like, I'm not able to do this. So I got up, and Aaron had already put himself through hell for 4 hours, and I could just imagine what he had to go through, and I was like, oh, I have to do this. Like, so I got up on the treadmill, and I'd never been in such agony. Like, other than actually when I was telling you, when I was a kid training like that, that was, I think, the hardest I'd pushed myself in so many years. And it was funny, just because you had that sort of pressure of, you're doing this for something more important than, what's typically just your own achievement. That really helps. But God, like, I think I got off the treadmill to go to the toilet, and the clock was still running, but I had to get off the treadmill to go to the toilet, I think 2 or 3 times, and then you had to make up the pace. So the set out pace was 18 kilometers an hour. I had to up it to 18 and a half.
Just to catch back up, and then
just to catch back up, and it was fucking agony.
But I think you probably should go to Ironman. 217 off the bike in Kona should put you up there.
If I could just run, I don't think the bike. I don't know if I get through the bike. 180 kilometers.
Yeah, and you've done that for Pay the House, which is
we did that for Pay the House, and we raised just over 10 grand.
It's amazing. So and they're a mental health and suicide awareness charity, and within Ireland, isn't that right?
Yeah. So
it's for a good cause. All the pain and suffering.
It was so rewarding. I mean, usually when you finish a race, it's sort of a there's elation to for a few minutes, but then there's a real sort of pride and joy of doing something like that.
It's a lot of money raised and a lot of awareness raised. Like, I'm not sure I heard of the charity before you've done that. So like you're heightening awareness all around and raising
Yeah, it
money
was
at the
good.
same time. It's good.
Yeah.
Um, so you were saying, Con, you're in University of Limerick. Are you still studying, or are you just full time training there? Or
Yeah, I'm still studying, so I would have I sort of broke up my. I went to study originally in UCD, and I dropped out. I didn't enjoy what I was doing, and then took up. I did a year just full time sport, and then I came back, and I figured out in that year what I sort of had an interest in, and the high performance. There was a high performance unit set up in Limerick at the time,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, my mates were down there, and I decided, yeah, everything's in place, go down there. And it should have taken 4 years, but I broke up one of the years last year because I thought the Olympics was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I broke that up into 2 years, and now it's gotten to the point where I'm just like, I just want to get it done and over with. So I
Yeah.
did this full year instead of trying to break that up as well.
And what are you studying there?
Product design.
Cool. And
So yeah.
is that something you would like to do in the future? Is that like a passion?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, like I would have, even going back to say when I was like the thing with sport, everything's been really a process of elimination.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're very, very lucky to find something like that you love by just, by saying,
Yeah.
this is what I want to do, you go do it. And that's the thing that it was, for
Yeah.
me anyways, it's always been a process of elimination. And yeah, I've by process of elimination found out that this is something similar to this, if not this, that I want to do. Even at the moment, my FYP, some like my final year project in college is it's a running shoe. So there's a lot. You
Sure.
mean there's a lot of areas where you can go in as a career path.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd
Yeah.
be super passionate.
Is shoes something you're like interested in?
Yeah,
What are you thinking about all the latest? I think every company's bringing out a new carbon plate. What's your
I think
thoughts on
they're.
that?
I think it's. I think it's. Uh, I don't know. I hope it's not compared to like the runners of the past. Do you know what I mean? That would be the only thing. It's like
Yeah.
even Nike came out and they've discontinued the Viperfly. I think it's the Viperfly
Mm-hmm.
there a couple of weeks ago because they don't want to affect Bolt's legacy. Chep, the guy, he broke the 2 world records last year and he was wearing their new Spike. So I mean, so long as it's, yeah, you're not. I mean, I think it's pretty cool to see how innovation drives performance
Yeah.
and what can we do when we marry the two together. But there definitely has to be limits to that because
Yeah.
it's not fair on the previous record holders, and it's also at the end of the day you're still getting the same result.
Mm-hmm.
You're still going to get the same guy that's going to win
Yeah.
the
It's
race.
just a bit quicker
You're just
overall.
Everybody's just a bit quicker.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you tried any of them personally? Like any of the
I have a couple of pairs.
they're good.
They're very good.
They're
They're
good.
really good.
Um
Like they make perfect sense. Like I mean, like there's a few. I think we're going to see even more in the next couple of years, but there might be a cap put on it. Um, but like simulating what your anatomy does already is, that's what I'm currently. I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing because I don't know.
yeah.
I won't get into that. But yeah, shoe design. I think there's a lot of, even though it doesn't seem like it, I think there's a lot of uh, area for improvements.
Yeah.
Even with say, the barefoot movement,
Yeah.
that was sort of dismissed, but there's a lot of truth in
Yeah.
what they were trying to get. Now the reality is like you have to run on concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So a design solution that's offering that cushioning but allowing your foot to move, and then your biomechanics to improve. Um, I think there's a lot of area for companies to develop in that realm. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's exciting. As a product designer, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm wondering I have it here, 2 seconds. You read this?
Oh no, I must.
Read that. It's pretty good. If you're in the shoes, just a story like I never, everyone knows Nike, but you don't know the man behind it. Like, but I read that book and it's
It's a very successful book, isn't it?
yeah, it's pretty. If there's a red Nike tick on it, that's probably why
It's
I
good.
bought it in the shop. I don't even not the name or not the for what the story is gonna be. It's like probably gonna be good. So, but no, it's a really good book, especially if you're in the shoe design, and then
Okay,
the guy's story, Phil Knight's, is pretty good, it's interesting. So,
definitely.
it's inspiring, I'd say, for yourself, like in that
That regard.
line of work. So, but so back to where were we training at University of Limerick? Is that what's that look like on a day to day? Who's there at the moment, and who do you have a coach there, or do you what way is it?
Um, Hopefully, so there's a girl, there's Lynn Algar, so she's involved in TI.
Yeah,
Wonderful lady. She was sick there for a while, and she's hoping to come back and to coach us. Um, the last few months have been just because we haven't been able to get together. Anyways, we're not being
yeah,
allowed, and it's only really this semester that the high performance athletes are allowed into the pool. It's been sort of individual training. I live with Aaron, as I said, so we do some training together.
mm-hmm.
We have the turbos here, and I mean it's really the perfect setup just because for myself, anyways, you're trying to maximize your efficiency, trying to get work done, and then training, and yeah, it's good. But for in the future, hopefully, yeah, to be get reset up. Hopefully, have the coach if it's not Lynn, somebody else,
Yeah,
and in September that there's a proper group.
yeah. And you
Yeah,
obviously have there's a 50-meter pool there, is there? Or
yeah, and
50-meter
like
pool, and
like you've got a 50-meter pool and you've got a 400-meter track behind it, so
it's perfect. And you obviously your gym, and
yeah.
you're you're looked after in that regard, so it's good. Um, there's a there's a video on YouTube that of yourself as a wild Mayo on it,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
class. It's class, and it's you're narrating it, aren't you? It's like, did
yeah,
you write the what you're saying, or was that your own
yeah.
words?
I did.
It's
I
pretty cool.
must have felt poetic at the time.
If anyone listening, check it out. It's called Transitions,
Yeah,
and I remember seeing it when it came out at the time, but then last night I was just looking at it again, prepping for this. But it's an amazing video of Ireland, and like obviously myself as well, train a lot in Donegal, and it just gives you that sense of you see like these nice
it
photo.
captures it.
Yeah, that's it. It captures what we're training in here, because you see a lot like people in Dubai or like Arizona, these like straight desert roads, and obviously it's good for training, but like you're swimming around these cliffs and
It's
running up
brutal. Yeah.
Crook Patrick and stuff. It's sort of it shows like it shapes the athlete you are, like the strength and the versatility.
hmm
But what's it been like for you in Ireland? Do you enjoy it training here?
I think what you've just said is a good point. I think um, when you train in this weather, it definitely makes you mentally tough. Like it
Mm-hmm.
makes you, even with the Norwegians, I'd say they're in a similar situation of you develop a sort of resiliency to just getting things done.
Yeah,
Um, there's there's the issue when you go abroad, you're not heat adapted.
yeah,
Um, but I think there's definitely there's benefits to both. But yeah, having to live in the west of Ireland is tough, and having to train the west of Ireland is tough. I think even for kids that are training, that they're sort of told that and they realize
yeah,
that. Um, when you're going out for a Sunday spin with a club, if you're a 16-year-old and you're doing whatever 100 kilometers with a bunch of old lads and it's pouring down, like that's
yeah.
commendable. Like I know when I was training us down in Australia, and like I mean, it'd be 20 plus degrees outside. If it were to drizzle, they wouldn't go out. And I mean, I was like, "Are you soft? Like, come
Uh,
on, this is ridiculous."
I think I heard either Johnny or Alistair Brownlee. One of them said like when they're on the start line and it's like a bad day and it's wet, and they just
You're excited,
look either side and see like Gomez and Mullen like they're
shivering.
gone, they're too soft. We're too used to
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
So there's definitely that benefit. But as you say, on the flip side, you might be heat adapted, but there's many things you can do to get
heat
that heat
adapt.
adaptation indoors or a few training camps and stuff. So it
And
definitely
even in just the going back to say the World Champs in Auckland, like that was a cold, wet day,
mm,
and that played in my favor because I mean most of the guys there were from hot countries,
yeah,
and especially I think if you're a junior, where you're probably you know as you get a bit older, I think you're more capable of dealing with the elements anyways. But
yeah,
yeah, there's definitely benefits to it. Yeah.
yeah. And like you said, you spend a bit of time training in Australia. What did you find that beneficial to your performance
Yeah,
in the
I
block?
really enjoyed it for one, but it was the first time I trained with, I suppose, a professional group, yeah, and realizing, I think maybe seeing what you need to do every day, and sort of what a camp should look like, and what some because all you were exposed to was really what you had in Ireland, which is very good when we were coming up through the junior ranks, but you were only getting those camps maybe once every couple of months because everybody lives in a different part of the country. So that was the first time where I was in a triathlon group.
Mm,
As you were in the past, you were going to cyclists, runners, swimmers. That was the first time you were with guys that were at the top level and they were doing training all the time together.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there was definitely benefits to it. I don't think it's completely necessary, but um, I think I learned a lot from it. Even disregarding the physical development, it was a great experience.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'd
Stuff.
advise it.
So thanks. My income probably has taken up a lot of your time, and
No,
it's probably
uh,
nearly bedtime training in the morning, I assume. But um, just where could people follow you if you want to let them know
um,
any social
you
media or
can follow
something?
me on follow me on Instagram. I don't really use Twitter and
Yeah,
I'm on Instagram, con_Doherty, and yeah, it was a pleasure. I'm going to say it. I don't know if any of your fans now know I'm the first one that was on his podcast.
the first
So I look
podcast.
for
So thanks to Colin for coming on, and when it's a big podcast and everyone's looking to get on, I'll remember
yeah,
Colin bringing back
I'll
on.
come back.
But so people can follow Colin there on Instagram and keep up to date, and hopefully we see him on a start line soon, and um, cheer for him, cheer for the Irish Vest, and
That's
hope
it.
to see success this year for you and in the future.
Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks very much, man. Okay, everybody, show's over. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Con for coming on the show. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and please leave a review. It would mean a lot. We have new episodes coming every week. We have a lot of great guests lined up. Can't wait to release the next few weeks for you. Thanks again. Stay tuned. See ya.